Okay, how many of you have heard about the blockchain technologies? Heard about, yeah, well. How many of you have heard about Bitcoin? Almost everyone, yeah? Because it deals with money. Everything that deals with money, people get interested. But in reality, blockchain is more about decentralization of trust. That is what it's all about, decentralization of trust. And I'll try to explain why is that. You go to a bank, you make a transfer, or you put some money in. So you have to, basically you have to trust the bank. And if you check your account, you see that you have a balance there. So there is a central authority in which one you realize that you rely upon that says you effectively have 2,500 euros in your account. If you transfer that amount of money to a third party or to a friend, then that amount is discounted by the amount that you transfer to your friend. But all of that is guaranteed by your bank. It's a central source of trust. Like a religion. Here you have some religion images. You trust on a third party that says that something happened on the past or a transaction is being made. That gives the power of the economy to those central authorities. And what the blockchain wants to do is decentralize the trust, and at the end of the day, decentralizing the trust is decentralizing the power of those entities. So, I'm going to give you a practical example. You think on a notary. And a notary also give faith or trust that the land or an administrative act or a business deal is being made. So, if I say that this building is mine, a notary can say, well, it's truly yours, or is it that another person? You trust the notary as well, and that's how things work. But nowadays, because of the information technology, a central authority that verifies transactions is no longer needed, and I'll show you why. If I take this bottle, what was it, Oscar, no? Olive. If I take this bottle from Oliver, is Oliver? Yeah. Correct? I take this bottle of water from Oliver. You've seen this. You've seen me doing this. All of you, have you seen me taking this bottle of water from Oliver? Raise your hands. That's decentralized truth. Do you need a notary that confirms that I take this bottle of water from Oliver? Do you need a notary that says that? You don't need it, because you all seen that. So if I try to say that I haven't got this bottle of water, or he tries to say, I still have this bottle of water, you will say, hold on a sec, it's not true. I've seen it. So basically that's the blockchain. If I transfer back the bottle of water to Oliver, that's yours again. So you all have seen this. We don't need a central authority that verifies this transaction. And that's all about blockchain. We finish. We can go. So a blockchain, what does is verifies that transactions on a decentralized manner. And the differences in between some blockchain technology and another blockchain technology is mainly because of how do I choose the witness. So different blockchain, the basics of different blockchains is how do I choose different witness. So for instance, if it's a public network, you are all invited to get in. This is not the case. We have someone on the entrance checking our IDs. So if we are a blockchain, that would be this will be a private blockchain because someone has been verifying our IDs before we get in. So we have to be allowed to get in to be a witness of the transaction of the water because there's been a control, people's control downstairs. There are other different types of blockchains, and there are public ones. Public one means that anybody going down the street can go in this place, witness the transaction, and therefore being part of that blockchain. That's a public, it's open access. So, we're getting more into that. So, whether it's public or private, you know that the transaction is being made because you trust there are many people looking at the transaction. But try to think that many of you agrees for a transaction not to be made or for a fake transaction to be recorded because you have an economic interest, because you love water or you love Oliver and you want him to keep the water. So you agree to say that this transfer of water didn't occur. How we prevent that? Now we are talking, the first thing we were talking about was about decentralizing trust. Now we are talking about consensus. So in a decentralized trust, we need a certain consensus on how things work out. One of the most typical consensus is the majority. So if the majority of you say that this transaction had occurred, that will mean that that transaction by majority, by consensus majority, did occur. And that's one of the most common ways to ensure that a transaction is being made. So let's try to get from the blockchain to the economic value of the transaction itself. In a private network that verifies transaction, so you have an ID to get in, and then you verify these transactions, there could be an incentive for you to verify transactions. So you need to be rewarded to verify those transactions. Otherwise, why would you care? If you don't get anything from verifying transactions, why would you care about saying, okay, that's been true or that's been fake transaction? So you have to receive a reward in that verification of the transactions. So in a private, you can have personal incentives, or you are paid by someone to verify transactions. In the public network, where everybody can be a witness, you need some economic incentives to verify the transactions, because otherwise, why someone coming out of the street want to get in and verify a transaction? It's been made. Why? Because you have to put an incentive to verify those transactions. Correct? Now we get into the Bitcoin thing. So basically, Bitcoin refers to the blockchain and as well the economic incentives that the witnesses have to verify the transactions. So, how does it work? Do you remember that saving account that you have like in a small book that I put in an ATM? You put it in the ATM, and those record line by line the transactions. You remember that? You go into the ATM, you put there, you put there another one. All the transactions are recorded in a book. This ledger, a ledger of your account. So it's a ledger of your account. So the blockchain will be that book with your transactions. With transaction, not necessarily yours, but everybody's transaction of Bitcoins. that book. Why is it called blockchain? Try to imagine that each of those pages of your book for the ATM is a block. And it's called a blockchain because it has many pages or many blocks together. So basically the blockchain will be that book of transactions in which each page is a block. I'm going to stop here. This is cool. Why this is cool? Because you're going to understand what is blockchain at the end of the day, and not many people understand how it works. So it's worth to have attention because you can explain it to a third party. So that's fine. So you have your book of transactions. That's the blockchain, and if each of the pages are a block, and all together are the blockchain. We get there. How are we open? If this was blockchain network, all of you are voluntary. So it's not private, it's public. So anyone coming out of the street can come here and start verifying transactions. So it's an open. So we're going to see how the rewards works. So every time I'm doing transactions, with water or with whatever, I record a transaction that's aligned into my block or my page into the blockchain. So in the blockchain case, every 10 minutes, more or less, a full page of transaction is written. And then you have to add that page, that block, on top of the rest of the blocks for the blockchain. So basically, the rewards works because the one that is able to introduce a new page of transactions in the block is the one that receives the reward. That's how incentives works. So we have a record of all the transactions, which is the blockchain. I produce an additional page, 10 minutes worth of transactions, and I have to add that page, that block of transactions to the blockchain. The one of you that is able to introduce that new page that contains last 10 minutes transactions on top of the previous one are the one that get the reward. I think it's now 25 bitcoins or less than that because it decreases with the time. But I think it's around, you get 25 bitcoins for putting the last page of that block of transactions. 25 bitcoins at 5,000 euros and $5,000 each is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, okay? So who's the one of you that is going to get that reward? One thing that you have to comply with is to record correctly all the transactions. So if you are witnessing the transaction and writing them down, and you do it properly, so you compare with others, you say, okay, I did it quite well, so I have the transaction correctly written. So how many of you have written correctly the transaction? It's really easy to do that. You just have to be looking at it, and that's a computer, you don't have to do it. So all of us will be able to say, I have the correct writing of all the transactions. So who's gonna get the reward? If every one of us record correctly the transaction, who's going to get the reward? The one that is able to introduce that last block in the blockchain onto the ledger, onto the blockchain. So on top of writing down correctly all the transaction, you have to guess a number. It's like the lottery. It's like the lottery. And the one in between you that get that lottery number that it comes announced, that get that number right, is the one that is going to get the reward. 25 bitcoins, which is 25 times $5,000. And how are you going to guess that number, that lottery number that allows you to put the last block of the blockchain? So you're just going to guess. That's why they say Bitcoins consume loads of energy. It's true. Because it's not in verifying transaction. That is that easy for a computer. Try to imagine it's 10 minutes worth of transactions. That's really computational easy to do. You just have to write them down. It's really easy. The complicated part is to guess the nonce, the lottery number, to get the reward. And how you do that is a really simple process. You have to guess a number, and you just say numbers, basically. If you have a computer, you can do it with your own computer. You try, but do not try to guess a number that is this long. It's a 34 letters and numbers number. So it's really difficult to guess. It's really difficult to guess. If you have a computer, you may try to guess the number, but it will be like, try to imagine a string of letters and numbers, really complicated, but you will be saying something like, is it 1? Is it 2? Is it 3? You will be really slow. Meanwhile, the Chinese, back in China, getting the electricity from a dam, they are trying to guess numbers as, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, so statistically it's far more easy for them to guess the number. So they will get the reward. So basically, we've seen that a blockchain is a way to decentralize trust. So we don't need a central authority that verifies the transaction has occurred. That's one thing. If it's a public network of witness where everybody's allowed to get in, we have to guess how are we going to reward them, and we're going to reward them by guessing a number and verifying transaction. And if it's a private one, I can try to find out other ways to verify those transactions. So, questions? Questions? You want to add something to this?
Can do. Just basically to sum it up, a blockchain is just a ledger, a decentralized ledger or database where a lot of people are verifying the same information. But a lot of people mistake it just for the economic value as like a currency and vice versa. But it can be used in a lot of different use cases to verify certain data in certain industries. So let's just take a random example, car rubber and tires, for example, right? The journey that, there's a lot of fake rubber on the market. So the journey that the rubber takes to get on your car, for example, or to get in the shop, using supply chain through blockchain, we can really track the whole journey from where that rubber was actually originated from, where it was produced in the factory, and we can verify this information on the blockchain, basically. So it's a really good transparency thing, just basically for verifying any information, and I think it can really improve. It can take a lot of fraud off the market. It can really improve a lot of efficiency of everyday businesses. I just really think a lot of people mistake it as just a currency and an economic value.
Yeah. Basically, it's that if you have a private network and you're verifying transactions, you have your own incentives, whatever, you pay, or you have there's another way. Different blockchains are different because you have different witness to the network. And then the Bitcoin uses something that is called proof of work, which is anybody can verify transactions, but you have to be able to guess that number. So you need computational power to do that. So the economic incentive is to guess that number through computational power. But if you have your own company, for instance, all of you get shares of that company and you verify a transaction simply because you are interested in verifying those transactions. In the supply chain, for instance, if you're Carrefour, you don't need to pay your witness for verifying where that apple came from. You will build your own blockchain with different witness to verify a transaction. So therefore, the economic incentives are built into the network.
what I understood is that if you apply it to, let's say, the music sector, you would be able to trace how much of the money could go to, for example, artists, how much could go to the other people who are in the chain. But I didn't get it from your explanation, so I lost something there. Can you please try to explain?
So are you talking about kind of, sorry, can you hear me? Yeah. Are you talking about kind of in the music industry, kind of as the fraud aspect once again? So are you talking more of like how the artists are getting paid in like third world countries through, I don't know if this is the right answer to your question, but let's take in Venezuela, for example, a radio station plays your song 10,000 times and actually only reports it 25 times, 250 times, which happens a lot, right, in the music industry. If we put the actual song on the blockchain, for example, and you can actually play the song off the blockchain directly, you can actually count it in real time how many times that song has been played. And the same in restaurants and events when people go in and work out how many times the track's been played. If you play it directly off the blockchain, you can accurately monitor, as long as the song is only stored on the blockchain, you can actively monitor how many times that song's been played, and of course, then the monetary value, you can kind of work out from that accurately. Because there's a lot of fraud, right, going on. Like, is that the answer to your question? Are you talking more about artists?
But how do you put a thing on the blockchain? That's what I'm...
How would you put the music on the blockchain?
Yeah.
I guess you'd use a smart contract. Do you want to explain smart contract? You can explain smart contract.
Well, actually, there's difference in between Bitcoin and smart contracts or blockchains, one blockchain and another blockchain. In the Bitcoin blockchain, what you're transferring is just an economic value. So it's like moving money around, just that. How many Bitcoins you transfer, Satoshi is how they call the fraction of a Bitcoin, is called Satoshi. So just that. But there are other blockchains that the transfer is not like something of economic value itself. It can be a contract or it can be anything. So you can, a song is basically a digital record nowadays. If you play Spotify, we're going to have a roundtable later on with Real Networks, which was the first one playing music live on stream. So basically, a music is a file on the computer. So you don't have to transfer something like Bitcoin, like an euro, like something. You can transfer not only the file, which will be the file called son.mp3. So you can transfer that file, son.mp3, and a whole lot of characteristics attached to that song, like who can play, how many times it's been played, who's the original owner, where it's been transferred, and all sorts of things that you want to embed in a contract that not only contains the song itself, but it contains loads of information attached to that song. That's just one of the examples. Later on the roundtable, we will have someone from 4Tunes, basically deals with metadata of songs. Try to imagine that you, as a singer, can produce a song, mysong.mp3. Then you attach that by programming to a smart contract. That means that you can set on stone which characteristics are attached to that particular file. So for instance, you can even set how many times it can be played. It can be played 3 times. After playing 3 times, it will be deleted. So in a smart contract that you are transferring to others, like you transfer money, like you transfer Bitcoins, you're transferring a song with loads of information inside. So after that song is played 3 times, it will be erased from the database. Or you cannot play it if you're not within a group, or cannot play if you don't pay X money, or you can only play it in South Africa, or it cannot be played in Mexico, for instance. So you attach basically loads of information to that contract, and that the only reason why it is called a smart contract is because it contains loads of information inside the file that can be auto-executed. So that's why you can transfer not only ownership, but loads of other things attached to that particular file. That's just an example based on what you can do with a file, with a song that is a file, digital file. But try to think, we will talk about that later on, but try to think about rights for that song. So you transfer it. You can be an artist, for instance, and you can produce a song. Then that album, you tokenize that, which means you divide it into small parts. And you sell it in advance to your fans. So your fans will pay in advance for the right either to get the song before than anyone, or for a right to get a share of the income that song generates. And the beauty of that is that you can get finance before you release your album, and you don't need here it goes. You don't need a notary that verifies each of the single owners of the rights of your album. Because you have like thousands of witnesses that says that you have compromised yourself to divide your album in X parts, 1,000 parts. It's not 1,001. An example. You go to a notary and you say, I want to sell the rights for my album, and those are going to be 1,000, we're going to divide it equally in 1,000 rights. So all the revenues of my album is going to be divided by 1,000. Then you go to a notary, you sign that. And then you publish on your web page or whatever. And then you go to another notary that is not connected to that one, and you sell again your album to 1,000. So effectively you are dividing your rights by 2,000 instead just 1,000. And it's because you have a centralized authority that's a notary that says that, but you have another notary in another country that is not connected, and he's saying exactly the same. Meanwhile, if you release that on the blockchain, once you release it, the public can take a look at the contract and say, effectively, the rights for these albums are be divided into 1,000, and each of us can verify that. So, first thing, you don't need to pay for a notary, which is a hassle. And second thing, everybody can verify that transaction, the terms of the contract of the rights of your album. So that's why it's quite interesting, because you have the economic value is not dispersed, it's not centralized, and you can control it. But it is called a blockchain because you cannot modify it. You cannot go and undo a transaction that you previously made. You can't undo that because it's being recorded. It's like if I try to say I didn't get the water from Oliver, all of you will say, okay, we saw that, we have recorded that, and you take that water. So you can change that. So it's immutability, distributed trust, and rights for the economic value that you are releasing. That's why it's so interesting, not only for the music industry, but for many other industries.
Not interesting for the banks, the notaries, and the states, probably.
Yeah, well, I have a friend who's a notary, and we'll be talking about transactions of land ownership, of real estate assets. And I sold a storage room to a Frenchman just to try it out, how it works. And I used to give some talks together with my friend, the notary. And I was giving this talk in Malaga, and in the middle of the conversation, someone else was talking. He grabbed my attention and said, I just found out that we are not necessary anymore. And he said that. Well, you need the notaries for a reason. For instance, when you sign a contract, there's no way that a smart contract can say that you're sane or insane. You need a notary. The notary say, okay, I can see that he's sane. He's not being dragged to force to sign this. He came voluntarily to sign this. So he's verifying the trust of the contract. I mean, what verifies the blockchain, we're getting even deeper. What verifies a blockchain is just what you say that the contract has to verify. I can go to a blockchain, whatever it is, and say that this building is mine, and that will be recorded forever. Or I'm the author of El Quijote, and I go and record that into a blockchain, and I say, I'm the writer of the blockchain, I'm the writer of the El Quijote, and that is going to be writing in the blockchain forever, ever. And that's true. It will be recorded on the... But I will be recording a lie permanently in the time. That means nothing. So, after all what I say, blockchains is for nothing if you can record something that is not true. And you can do that. You can do that. So you need a way to, and that is going to be good for the talk after all, like Evan Bright, say that I sell tickets for a concert. And I say, I'm selling tickets on a concert, and those are recorded on the blockchain. Yeah. Who's your artist? Oh, it's going to be Lady Gaga. So you sell very secure tickets for a concert of Lady Gaga that you can trace on the blockchain, you can transfer the authority, you can the ownership, you can verify individually each of those ticketing, you know where do you sell them, where they go, you can do many things. But Lady Gaga never going to come because she didn't sign a contract with her. So everything is recorded on the blockchain, but that doesn't mean that it's true. The connection of the blockchain with the true is something that is called, if you say to someone, I know what is blockchain, like you remember Matrix, I know Kung Fu. When you say someone, I know blockchain, it's like, I know blockchain, that's good. But if you say that you know what an oracle is, top of the pops. An oracle is the thing that connects the reality to the blockchain. That's what an oracle does. So you need an oracle to provide trust to the blockchain. So you need someone that says, or a system that says that effectively those tickets are for a concert of Lady Gaga. So you need that. Otherwise you will be recording something immutable, but it's not true. So you need oracles that connect real facts to the blockchain. And so sometimes you need a person or a company to trust. The blockchain itself is just a technology that is a method to decentralize trust, but it doesn't give you the truth unless you have or an economic incentive or an oracle that verifies that transaction is really occurring. Questions? Do you want to add something? Sí.
Yo no he entendido bien el tema de la recompensa.
Vale.
O sea, sé cómo que es aleatorio, cómo es que hay que adivinarlo. A no ser que la traducción que es casi cada 10 minutos va entrando un bloque.
See, the economic incentives for for verifying the transactions. So that's basically how witness on a blockchain get rewarded. How witness on a blockchain get rewarded. And the way that witness are rewarded on a blockchain is by verifying transactions. You verify transactions, you get a reward. But, because it's quite easy to verify transactions, because it's really easy. You just have to write down this amount of Bitcoin went to this, from this account to this account, from this account to this account. That's really easy. Computational is really simple. It's really simple to do that. Really simple. I have to add something else to reward the witness. And what I do is you have to verify all the transactions and as well guessing a number. So I write down a number here, number 8. I write it here, and then you are all verifying transactions. And when 10 minutes passed, I have to add those transactions, 10-minute transaction, all that has been happening in those 10 minutes, all those 10 minutes transactions. I have to add that page of the block in the blockchain, and I ask you, how many of you verify correctly the transactions? And all of you will, because it's computationally simple, you will all say, we have verified the transaction correctly. Maybe there's one that didn't verify the transaction correctly, so I will just ask, so after all transaction, what is the final balance in your account? Try to imagine that it's 2,200. Everybody here will say 2,200 except one. And I say, well, you're not going to get the reward because you didn't even witness correctly the transaction. So you are out of the reward. And then once you all raise your hands and say, yeah, the final balance is 2,200, then I'll ask you, and what's this number that I have here? Then you say 7, 6, 5, 2, and then someone will say 8. And the one that guessed the number, I will give them the reward. And that's all. You keep on being incentivized because sometimes you will get that number right. So you are verifying transactions because sometimes you guess that number. Basically, it doesn't really work like that. It's like all of you form like what is called a mining pool. So it doesn't really matter who guesses the number. Some of you will guess that number to get the reward. But the reward is going to be shared among the people in the same pool. So like for instance, this is pool A, this is pool B, and then you're going to say numbers to get the reward of the Bitcoin's transactions, and you're going to say some numbers in this side. If you get the number here right, if you get the number 8, you will share among all of you the reward for guessing the number. But if it's you, you will share the reward in between you. So that's a mining pool competition to guess the number that gives you the reward. So that is an economic incentive. I honestly don't think it's the better, because there is now the mining pools consumes more energy now than Denmark, the entire country. Not the verifying of transaction, that's quite easy, but the guessing of the number, the hashing competition, because it's a hash, it's a string of numbers and letters, the one that you have to guess. The hash competition, the Chinese throwing hashes like crazy, also in Iceland. That competition for guessing the number to get the reward, the hash to guess the hash to get the reward, is consuming tons of energy. That's what it's not ecological, and it's not really. I don't really like it. At the end, the energy consumption is like an entire country. We have to guess better models for verifying the transactions. Yeah, it's not.
Impression that you gave an incentive and then you have hundreds of people just.
Yeah, you have tons of people trying to guess that number and getting the reward, and that is not ecologically friendly at all. Because in the case of the sun, I just want my sun to be verify the rights and the right that goes onto that song, some information attached to that, but I don't want to induce that energy consumption to verify that those transactions with your son or with your right has occurred. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. So there are better ways. Better ways like, for instance, another type of blockchain is based on, the blockchain that is based on guessing that hash is called the proof of work, because effectively you are working to guess that number. So it's called proof of work. There are other type of blockchains. For instance, there is one that verifies transaction, which is the proof of stake. It's like any of you, all of you are part of a company and you have some shares of that company. So would you try to fake a transaction? No, I wouldn't try to fake a transaction because that will be against my interest on the company. If I do a fake transaction and I try to verify that, nobody will trust my network. So because I'm a shareholder, I will lose value. So that is called proof of stake. And that doesn't consume electricity at all. So we're going to get into the uses of the blockchain later on. But the basic is just a way to verify things uncentralized. That's all. A way to verify things uncentralized. I got in deeper because I want you to understand how can I get the witness to verify those transactions, and how can I get incentives for verifying those transactions. But going simple, and that being enough for understanding blockchain, is a way to decentralize the trust. And that's all. You don't need a central authority that verifies transactions. That's all basically what you need to know about blockchain. Yeah?
I have a quick question about how it works with music. So, because there's no centralized organization, that means the PROs disappear. So let's say a Spanish author wants to have his music in blockchain. Somehow he will not collect any more royalties from Sky? Or how does it work?
Well, it depends.
No, it's all right. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. I don't answer this. No, go ahead.
Well, we do it half and half. That's fine. Well, we will answer twice. So basically what
Go on, it's okay. Go on.
yeah, well, yeah, you can chip in whatever you want. I'm not the owner of the mic. That's weird, is it? Yeah, and that's actually a company that it will be later on the table, so that's even weird. So the thing is, answering your question, that doesn't mean that you don't need someone in the middle to verify the transactions. You don't really need it. That means that you can transfer the trust of that company on a distributed network. So there will not be just that company itself. It will be a company using a tool to decentralize the trust. So you can transfer that trust to many players. So there's not only one person verifying that is true. So there will be many people verifying that transaction. So that makes it more trustable for the network to work. That's one of the sides. The other side is you can use the software like an open source software, and then anybody can use it. So if you're an artist, you can use an open source software to record your songs, to distribute it on the network, and then you will not need like a record company to distribute your music. You can do it your own. But then who's going to trust you a part of the network? You may need someone else that play with the trust, that complement your trust. Mm-hmm.
No, that's about right. Summed up. That's fine. It's okay. I'm not from the music industry, so I don't want to give the wrong answer.
You're not from the music industry?
I've started taking interest in the blockchain side of the music industry as such. I've started taking interest in where we can use blockchain in the music industry. The reason why I didn't answer the question is because I didn't want to give the wrong answer. So I wouldn't say what you said there.
Okay. So I think we finish here. If there are more questions, I will be glad to answer those. And okay, so we're done. Thank you very much.
That's why I didn't answer the question. That's why I didn't answer the question.